So welcome everyone. This is really exciting. We brought this Get to Know the NCDE last summer for our Joining Hands Symposium, and we're doing it again this summer and wanted to make it a little bit different, more of a discussion than a formal PowerPoint presentation to kind of keep that dialogue going. During this session, we have our program officer with the Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, David Levin, with us today, and our NCDE team, just to kind of dive into some more in-depth questions and have an interview with David leading this discussion. And before I bring in David as our facilitator, I wanted to bring on the NCDE team to introduce yourselves and also where you're dialing in from. I'm sure we're all, during this past year, it doesn't look like it did a few years ago. Usually the Clearinghouse team is all together in Eugene, Oregon, but we're now all dispersed, and I would have never guessed that 2 years ago. But I'm Monica Malhotra, the program manager for the Clearinghouse, dialing in from San Antonio, Texas. And I'd like to have Ashley share.
Hi everyone, this is Ashley Holden. It's nice to have you all here. I'm tuning in from Portland, Oregon. Recently transplanted from Eugene, Oregon, where my USEN is housed. I've been with NCDE for a little over 10 years now and started as an intern. And I remember my first project was reading aloud some news stories about people with disabilities participating in State Department programs. And I'm still doing that 10 years later.
Thanks, Ashley. How about you, Joey Lenny?
Hi everyone, I'm Joy Lenny Moran, and I am joining you all from New York City, Manhattan downtown, I guess, to be more specific. But I'm the newest member of the team. I've been with the team for pretty much as long as the pandemic has been around. So about a year and some months now, and it's been very exciting to learn what the team does as an exchange alumni. So thank you.
Thanks, Joy Lenny. And how about you, Justin?
Hello, everybody. This is Justin, project coordinator with Clearinghouse. I've been here for 5.5 years, and I'm coming to you from Eugene, Oregon.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, team. And now I was talking yesterday, I think, to David, who's going to be facilitating soon. And when we were speaking about this session, I was asking, what is the best way to introduce you in relation to the Clearinghouse? There's been such a strong partnership, collaboration over the years, and David will share more about the history of the Clearinghouse. Well, you might understand why this question came about. And then we were talking about, are you the father of the Clearinghouse? Are you the grandfather of the Clearinghouse? But I think there's many ways to identify, and that's why I'm even happier that David's here to share more personally his role specifically to the Clearinghouse. He is the program officer for a Clearinghouse project, and there's so much to the support, partnership, and the administration of our projects and initiatives that we carry out that is really in collaboration with David. David, thanks for joining us for this session and facilitating this more casual conversation that we're going to have. And based on what I just mentioned about your role, maybe the best place to start is an introduction from yourself, and then go into maybe a history of the Clearinghouse, and then you can share some questions with the team.
Monica, that sounds great. And I guess I would say Godfather. That way, I don't need to worry about generations.
Right.
It's an evergreen kind of title, I think. That's right. But I'm really happy to be with you. For this conversation about getting to know the NCDE, how it operates, what it does, the kinds of services and activities it provides for its constituencies. A bit about myself. I've been with the State Department's Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs since 1984. Started my federal career in 1977 with the Department of Education. And within the Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs at State, which we call ECA, since 1999, I've been the Program Diversity and Inclusion Coordinator, which means that I work with virtually all of our offices and all of our programs in an effort to make sure that we're doing a good job of including people from diverse audiences, diverse backgrounds in our exchange programs, and also ensuring that these diverse participants have rewarding, fulfilling, successful experiences. And that, of course, includes people with disabilities. And we make a point about saying that to us, disability is an element of our diversity efforts. It's not something that is separate. It's a part of what we do. And if you heard that, I think, very clearly in our opening remarks from Assistant Secretary Matt Lusenhop, who talked about the importance of the clearinghouse and the importance of our work in engaging people with disabilities. So as Monica said, I work directly with the clearinghouse. It's one of the best things about my job is working with Monica and her great team as the clearinghouse goes about its work. A bit of history about the clearinghouse. In 1996, the U.S. Congress asked the Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs to design and fund a clearinghouse to promote international exchange opportunities for people with disabilities. And I was asked to take on that project. So we designed a blueprint of a sort of basics of a clearinghouse, issued a request for proposals, and oversaw a grant competition that resulted in our awarding a grant to MIUSA, Mobility International USA, to administer the clearinghouse. And we fund the clearinghouse each year to specifically do that, to administer the clearinghouse. It's a tremendous partner for us, MIUSA itself. And you heard from my longtime friend and colleague, Susan Siegel, who is the co-founder and CEO of MIUSA, and it really has been, I think, a tremendous partnership. So we started in 1995, and I think the clearinghouse has evolved into, what I describe as an innovative, multidimensional global resource. We're building bridges. We talk about this between international exchange organizations and the international exchange community, for that matter, and the disability community. And I think Susan and MIUSA have really been a great partner with us, a strategic partner. In terms of the clearinghouse and sort of the enjoyment of working with it, I think it's always exciting because we're always developing and refining operations, sort of an ongoing kind of thing. Also, the range of activities is amazingly broad and comprehensive. Just to give you just a few examples of the kinds of things the clearinghouse does. For example, promoting exchange opportunities for international high school students coming to the United States, issuing the monthly Access to Exchange e-newsletter, looking at disability-focused exchange possibilities between the United States and the Muslim world, promoting Fulbright program opportunities, writing a resource document on disability-related sports exchanges, producing materials on sign language, including ASL, consulting with US embassies in Latin America, convening a meeting of the Clearinghouse's advisory board, 14 exchange organizations and 14 disability-focused organizations. And last, of course, but not least, orchestrating a multifaceted Joining Hands symposium. So it's as I said, it's sort of amazing the breadth of things the Clearinghouse addresses, the audiences it reaches, the way it does what it does. And that's what we want to share with you today, to give you a good sense of its resources and how you can sort of avail yourself of them. So we've got a number of questions that I'd like to pose to the Clearinghouse team that I think will help you get a sense of, again, what the Clearinghouse is about, what it does, the kinds of things it provides, and so forth. So let me pose this first question to Monica. And I'm talking about sort of building disability inclusion in international exchange. And the Clearinghouse does that in so many different ways to sort of deliver resources to the disability community about both the hows and the whys of participating in international exchange. Monica, can you talk about that and the ways that you provide information and materials to the disability community? And in fact, talk a bit about sort of the topics and questions that people ask most frequently.
Great, thanks, David. And just quick to mention for anybody joining us that David is dialing in from Washington, D.C., calling in by phone, so we won't see his video or anything like that for this webinar, unfortunately. But yeah, I think, David, you shared some of the resources that we build and continue to try to stay innovative each year. Everything changes and evolves, and we want to stay on top of that. And we've done so many interesting projects to reach more of the disability community, including podcasts, videos, publications, webinars, this symposium, and then under that umbrella of those type of mediums, if it's our webinar, if it's a publication, podcast, we also have campaigns. So we target maybe certain disability community or certain topic to let more people with disabilities know about certain projects. For instance, we had a #BlindAbroad campaign where that was one of our themes for a podcast. I believe it was our first podcast where we had #BlindAbroad and shared stories of alumni from the US with disabilities, as well as international participants who are blind, to share their experiences of the exchange programs they participated in, and to share those on a podcast, which is accessible by audio. We have the transcript as well for all of those, so those are more accessible. And we've done a Access to USA, #AccessToUSA campaign, reaching out to more international participants with disabilities to let them know about opportunities to come study in the United States. The Clearinghouse work does look at Americans with disabilities as well as international participants with disabilities, and promoting international exchange both directions. We also did an access to languages, #AccessToLanguages. And that one was focused on making sure people with disabilities know about opportunities to teach and learn foreign languages in a different country. Not all of our campaigns and initiatives have hashtags connected to them, but we do have other topics, as David, you've mentioned, such as diversity. We have an upcoming publication focused on diversity, disability, intersectionality, and the importance of people with disabilities from all backgrounds and experiences to be able to share and receive the support they need for a successful exchange program. We've done programs on community colleges. So there's many international participants that can come study at a community college. They don't have to study at a 4-year university. There's study abroad programs at a community college as well, so you don't have to wait till you're at a 4-year university to participate in those programs. So those are the different focuses that we've continue to evolve and reach out to each year. It varies. I think this year we're focused on youth with disabilities. So we want to make sure that you don't have to wait till you're, again, older to participate or even start thinking about studying abroad. You can start when you're a high school student to start thinking about what are those scholarships, what are those experiences of youth with disabilities participating in exchange programs. One final thing this year, I think we never stay still. We're always, as a team, kind of evolving what we can do and learning from what we've done and what we want to do next. Exciting that last year we launched an externship. So that is a virtual summer outreach project where we got alumni with disabilities of exchange programs to support us in reaching more people with disabilities. So creating this virtual outreach activity to promote access to exchange for people with disabilities. And that included creating an access guide, a webinar series, podcast, videos. And so kind of connecting with our community of alumni and helping us share the message and sharing our resources of people with disabilities participating in exchange programs. That one's continued this year, and this time we've got international and US participants, US alumni, being able to reach globally for this message. And another thing is our first Access to Exchange Summer Institute, ACE, and that is a 3-week summer program that Justin Harford is the instructor for. Dr. Harford will be the professor for that 3-week preparatory course to give more information to people with disabilities about how, why to participate in exchange programs, where to find scholarships, what types of programs are there beyond studying abroad. Maybe you want to volunteer abroad, maybe you want to work abroad. There's so many different programs. So creating this course to share and introduce all these topics, how to negotiate disability accommodations, hearing from other people abroad with disabilities. So this is, that's one thing to just share opportunities to participate and study abroad, but it's another to actually hear from the experiences and spend more time answering the questions and sharing the experiences of others who've done it. So those are two new things that the Clearinghouse is really excited to have launched this past year. I think I should stop there.
Save some for us, Monica.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
Sure. Monica, I think that's great. And I think it's for a person with a disability, regardless of where you want to go, what you might want to do, what your disability is, the Clearinghouse has a resource for you, has an idea, has something that will help you do that. I think that's terrific. The Clearinghouse is unique because it has two constituencies, as I mentioned. One is international, is people with disabilities, but the other equally important constituency are the people who are running exchange programs, the exchange program providers. And it's important that they understand, so how do you do a better job of including people with disabilities in your programs, and how do you accommodate them? That's a critical part of what the Clearinghouse does. So Ashley, if you would talk a bit about that, about the kinds of things that you do with the international exchange community in helping them do a better job of including and accommodating people with disabilities in their own exchange programs.
Absolutely. And I think kind of from the start, one of our missions has been to try to bridge these two different communities and get them communicating with one another and engaging with one another and letting them know that the other exists and that there's this whole community that can benefit from and also make contributions to the other. And so for the international exchange field, we work with a lot of professionals who maybe are study abroad advisors, exchange program providers, administrators. It really kind of runs the gamut. And we heard from some of these professionals in the webinar just prior to this one, kicking off Joining Hands, which was fantastic because we really get so much of our information from the international exchange professionals. to be able to pass those practices on to others. And so we really rely on that, you know, kind of growing those relationships with the exchange professionals. We do this by attending conferences where we know attract a lot of study abroad advisors and people who work in that international exchange world. And something that we've been trying to do more of is trying to bring more of a disability presence and representation into those environments. So, you know, if you ask Susan, our CEO, she'd call that reverse infiltration, or actually infiltration in this case of getting more people from the disability community into the international exchange spaces, and hopefully, you know, one goal being to eventually see more people with disabilities actually entering careers in this field, so that they will be represented just kind of organically. And so in addition to attending conferences, we offer a lot of one-on-one advising, or one-on-two advising, one-on-three advising, whatever you might need. And then, of course, our online tip sheets and our online best practices, again, are kind of culled from the experiences of the professionals who are just willing to share, take the time to share whether they're the success stories or what could have gone better. And so it's really a kind of a collective effort within the field. We do a lot of collaboration on articles that we submit to, you know, some scholarly journals or websites, and then our NCDE publications, as well as just other external news sites. And then, you know, we've also relished the opportunity to deliver trainings in person. Remember those days? Let's see, we've done trainings to campuses or organizations, or to your teams. And then, you know, more recently, we've done this virtually. So we're definitely open to finding out what professionals are, what their questions are, what they're looking for, what their goals are, and what they hope to advance in as far as disability inclusion, and then just try to get them the resources, whether those resources come from us, or whether we can connect you to, you know, another institution or another organization that we think, you know, could really benefit and advance your knowledge and what you're looking for. So if any of my team members have anything to add to that, I'd welcome it.
No, thanks, Ashley, for sharing. And I think, yeah, during this past year, we've gotten a lot of more invites to do these virtual workshops, if it's to the Institute of International Education, different universities, and it's good to be able to expand through these platforms to offer it to a lot more institutions without having to travel, even though I miss that as well. But it is good to kind of create that wider network and build these online trainings for more specific communities, if it's one university, and really having that conversation with them of what's going on their campus.
No, I think that's great, and I should mention that you know, even we at the State Department have, I mean, our exchange programs do a better job of including and accommodating people with disabilities, because we also benefit from Clearinghouse expertise and resources and connections and training and all of that. So while you know, it could be any program that could avail themselves of Clearinghouse services and so forth, we clearly have benefited from that at this Department of State itself. So I think that's great. As we think about international exchange for people both with and without disabilities, I think what comes to mind probably most frequently is a study abroad program for a college student. And I think that's great, and that's always been in lots of ways sort of a centerpiece of international exchange. But that's just one piece of the pie, and there really are many other kinds of programs that are available. So Justin, talk about other kinds of exchanges and programming sort of beyond sort of the collegiate academic model or framework that the Clearinghouse promotes and provides and encourages people to get engaged with.
Of course, David, it'll be my pleasure. So yeah, I'd love to talk about experiential exchanges. Apologize if my eye contact isn't quite on. I'm not feeling super well, and looking at my computer screen is like looking into the sun. But here we go. So yeah, as David said, I mean, there's not just study abroad, there's also volunteer, intern, scholarly research. There's a whole host of opportunities out there in the world for everybody, including people with disabilities. I also would say there's teaching in addition to those other things that I've mentioned. And there's a lot of opportunities, like I said, to do it. For example, we feature a number of them on our website. An example is the Christensen Grant, which essentially offers funding for somebody to conduct their own project abroad. And we had a person who went to Italy and taught American Sign Language to local Italian students on one of those grants. We're actually going to feature somebody in our upcoming magazine, a young woman who at the age of 17, she's blind. She participated in the Youth Ambassadors Program, and with a group of Colombian and Ecuadorian students, she volunteered in the Tenderloin and learned about how to create her own service project. And in fact, she went back home to her region of Armenia, which is a city in Colombia, because she's Colombian, and she actually organized her very own disability awareness project in this small local Colombian city of around 200,000 people, and it's all through the support of the Youth Ambassador Program. Another woman that we're looking forward to featuring is, she actually volunteered in the Peace Corps after a 30-year extensive career in education, and had some aging into disabilities, lower back issues, and things like that. And she actually joined not Peace Corps, but Peace Corps Response, which is a great program for people who have expertise in an area like education, and also in an area like disability too. Interestingly, I didn't realize it so much, but as I've learned more about all the opportunities out there, disability is one area of expertise that automatically our constituents enter into a program with. And so, I mean, I know a deaf person right now who is working on doing Alzheimer's research in Europe, and that's great. But there are also many opportunities, like the Christensen Grant person who I shared with you, who she took her own expertise from disability and brought them in the international context. Fulbright Scholar program, actually our Christensen student later also did a Fulbright teaching grant. So those are just a few examples of the programs that we want people to be aware of, that are out there and that are enthusiastic to bring in people with disabilities and for people from other underrepresented backgrounds, to make sure that the people that we're sending abroad and the people that we're bringing to our country are representing the diversity of the world. And in terms of how we support this, well, through direct advice, we have tip sheets on our website. One we did a few years ago on supporting volunteers with disabilities. We have another one I appreciate that talks about negotiating accommodations abroad, and another one that talks about disability cultures abroad. A lot of volunteer assignments, you're in rural areas, and so, I think you're experiencing a lot more of that local grassroots point of view in the different countries that you visit, and also sort of the availability of resources, which can sometimes be not quite what you expect, what you become used to in the United States. So disability cultures abroad, I like that article because it kind of gives perspective. And we're hoping to continue expanding those resources as well. Like I mentioned, I'm working on a new edition of our World Awaits You journal. It's going to come out at some point. Please keep an eye out on our newsletter to be the first to know when we release that magazine. And one of the things I'm hoping to add in that is going to be a resource on how program providers can support students on their programs, or volunteers or interns or scholars. And apart from that, the Away publication is going to include a whole host of stories that show you what it looks like when students or people with disabilities volunteer or intern abroad. Many of them actually are not students when they do their programs. So that's the great opportunity too. You don't have to just be a student for these programs. It's something that's available to professionals and people at the mid-level, at their mid-career, and people who are in retirement. And apart from that, I would just tell you that a few years ago, we actually put out another version of our Away journal on experiential exchanges that also has a lot of great stories in that. I'd encourage you to take a look. And another great example of service projects and kind of the stories that we featured is the A World Awaits You in Africa publication, which Ashley did a few years ago. And you know, the thing I think that's really important about publications like that is I think we're comfortable with the idea of people going and doing volunteer research or scholarly work in a place like Germany, where kind of we perceive that there's all the modern resources, probably disability rights laws. And so it's sort of, there's this perception that it's definitely more safe for people to go to some of those Northern Hemisphere countries. But the goal of publications like the Await in Africa is to draw attention to the fact that, you know, people also can volunteer in Southern Hemisphere countries as well. And even though accessibility and supports might not look the same as they do in a place like Germany or the United Kingdom, that there are still ways for outgoing and you know, open-minded folks to have really meaningful and unique experiences. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to you, David. Thanks.
Justin, thank you. And I think that that's great. And I think myself of things like, you know, programs in sports and in culture and the arts and in civil society. There's so many kinds of things that someone could do at almost any level, on almost any topic. So I think that's great. And the Clearinghouse does a really good job of demonstrating the variety of possibilities to the audience. We talk about broad reach, and the Clearinghouse is proud of the way that it reaches out to all sorts of people with disabilities, but also people who may be disabled, but also identify with as a minority within another part of their background. Ashley, talk a bit about, if you would, the ways the Clearinghouse reaches out to people with sort of looking across disabilities, and also working with people who, as I said, are disabled, but also identify their diversity in other ways as well.
Sure, David. This is Ashley, and I think kind of you've really hit the nail on the head with the fact that we can kind of think of disability and diversity in two ways. One is that disability in itself is very diverse, and kind of within that community, you have people with apparent disabilities, you know, maybe people who have physical or mobility or sensory disabilities, people who have non-apparent disabilities, such as medical conditions or learning disabilities or mental health disabilities, and intellectual disabilities, you know. And then even if you are talking about two people with quote unquote the same disability, if you look a little closer, you might find that they have different experiences with that disability. You might use different types of supports, have different ways of identifying with disability. And so it's really something we celebrate is that kind of diversity within the disability community. And then the second kind of side of that coin you were touching on, David, is that disability is an aspect of diversity, but it's not the only aspect of a person's identity. They might belong to a number of different communities, come from different types of backgrounds. And so one thing that we're really interested in is kind of how those different identities intersect and interact. You know, two people with, you know, similar disabilities coming from really different experiences in terms of, you know, gender, sexual orientation, race and ethnicity, socioeconomic status, nationality, and other kinds of cultural heritage, and so on. They're going to have so many different experiences to bring, and some really unique stories to share. And that's something that we as a team at NCD have been really wanting to invite people to be able to share that and provide a space for them to share that. And so one way we've been doing that, of course, is through our stories, the stories that we include on our website. You'll be hearing some of these stories during Joining Hands. And my colleague Joy Lenny, in fact, one of the sessions that will be, I hope you'll tune into for Joining Hands, is specifically going to get at that topic and explore a little more and ask the International Exchange alumni to reflect on how different aspects of their identities, including their disability identity, but also others, how that influenced their international exchange program and vice versa. And so we're always looking for more ways to explore that topic and celebrate it.
Ashley, thanks. I think that's great. And again, it really demonstrates sort of the Clearinghouse reach and the idea that no matter who you are, the Clearinghouse has information, has resources, has ideas, has things to share with you. And all of you have talked about sort of the kinds of the ways the Clearinghouse does its business, whether it's through the podcast or whether it's through the UA Journal that just talked about, or whether it's through training that Monica talked about. I mean, there's so many ways that information and resources are shared with people. I think one of the best ways, and maybe one of the most effective ways of the Clearinghouse sort of delivery mode is through its amazing website and database. And that's often where people start. And it's just a phenomenal resource that literally can answer any question you might think about in terms of disability and exchange. So, Joanne, talk a bit about the website, and maybe even can we give people a bit of a tour of the website so they can see the kinds of things that are there, and a bit about how they're organized and how people can retrieve them?
Yes, I think this is a great opportunity to do so. And I mean, I've been exploring the website on my own throughout this conversation, sort of just the person who has been putting in those links in the chat box as the team has been talking about the many resources that we have to offer. I'm going to be sharing my screen so you can all see the website. I'm looking to the side because I have a second monitor. But yeah, can everyone hear me well now?
You sound great, Joylyn.
All right, thank you. So this is our website. I'm on the homepage, and as you can see, one of the first things that pops up is the Joining Hands Symposium. So I'm going to just take you around the website and some of the resources that the team has sort of been talking about throughout this discussion. But my first, I guess, to go place is off to the far left. There's a title that says Access International Exchange, and there's a drop down that sort of tells you Americans going abroad, coming to the US, and for exchange professionals. So our Americans Go Abroad and Coming to the US pages really just are our landing page for where to get started and information for students in particular. And yeah, so am I on the right one? Let's see. Yeah, so when you scroll down and get to the getting started portion of the page, you'll find two sort of options that you can go to: find an experience abroad, and fund your exchange abroad. And so these are just two places to sort of get started, to learn more about the types of opportunities available, and sort of some personal stories and examples, and then to think about preparing to go abroad. And then it's the same sort of options for coming to the US. But when we go to for exchange professionals, we've been talking a lot about disability inclusion, and how we sort of bridge this idea in our work. And so a lot of what we share with exchange professionals, again, there's like a section at the bottom of this homepage says getting started. And there's 2 resources, how to begin, and 5 advising pitfalls to avoid. So I'm going to click on this right here, how to begin. And this sort of takes us to, I think, one of my favorite pages for exchange professionals that sort of gives like a broad overview of what advising participants with disabilities and how to get started. And these are just some tips on here. And then on the side, we see table of contents, which includes some other resources that are valuable to advisors, like knowing what disability questions to ask, sample accommodation forms. I think during the first session of the symposium today, we heard the panelists talk about the importance of having accommodation forms, and some even shared examples that they use in their universities. So this is a tip sheet that we have that provides that example as well. And we have others such as top 5 mistakes to avoid when advising people with disabilities, top 10 recruitment tips for attracting people with disabilities, and so forth. So it's a great page to sort of get started for professionals. And I'll take us to the knowing what disability questions to ask tip sheets, because we have here under this tip sheets an area for documents. And these documents, there are 2 types of documents that are by disability type, I would say. One is like an information form, and the other is based on guidelines for advisors. So if you're an exchange professional, this is definitely one of the top resources that we recommend that you get, you learn more about while on our website. And then I guess the third part that I'll sort of take you to is our resource library. There's a search box on the right, and it's titled Search Our Resources, and there's a space for you to type in keywords in a search box. So when you click on the top title, Search Our Resources, you are taken to our resource library, which I have found quite amazing. Quite amazing to learn from as a new member of the team, because it's a great way to get to a lot of resources and sort of find what you're looking for. On the left side, we have different filters that you can choose from. So filter by topic, filter by resource type. So we heard the team talk about tip sheets, personal stories, best practices, books and journals, which is our way, and podcasts. So if you're looking for a certain type of resource, definitely pick from this filter. And we have a filter for disability type, audience type, exchange, and I'm just scrolling down the page to show you the type of filters on the right here. Does anyone on the team have like an example or a resource that we could find using the resource library in mind, or to sort of provide an example?
Joylene, this is Ashley. Yeah, one thing I use the resource library for is to find out if, if somebody says, I'm planning to go to Costa Rica, for example, to volunteer abroad, and they want to know, what is it like, what can I learn from other travelers with disabilities who have visited Costa Rica? So maybe you could search by country.
Yeah, search by destination, and we can sort of find here Costa Rica. And you select this filter, and once you select that filter, Ashley, thank you. That's a great example. You're sort of taken to the types of resources that we have that are related to Costa Rica in some way. And you can see that a lot of them at the top have the type of resource. For example, the top 3 resources here are a best practice, advocating for success, personal story, intersecting paths, a study abroad provider and an alumni join forces, and a personal story, which is also a podcast, ripple effects, blind people can do that. So I hope that this has sort of given you a great overview of what our website sort of looks like and where you can find what you may be most interested in or looking for. And I'll stop here unless the team has another example for me to show.
Jorlani, I think that's great, and I should add that the Clearinghouse, literally from the very beginning, has been acknowledged and been an award winner for accessibility on its website. So, regardless of what your disability might be, the website is designed so to facilitate your access and your use of it. So I think that's great. Before we go to Q&A, let me ask one last question. We talked about the Clearinghouse as an evolving kind of thing over 26 years. So I think maybe I'll ask this question to Monica. In your 7 years with the Clearinghouse, so what have you seen as sort of major changes in terms of the kinds of things you're doing, or even the sort of the engagement with the disability community or the exchange community?
Great, thanks, David. I don't know if that should be for me or for you.
You have
a longer.
I'm giving it to you.
Okay. I think the very stark thing that I can see from the beginning is the shift of exchange providers moving from this question of if we have to include people with disabilities. I remember very vividly that those were the types of questions we were getting a lot more from universities and exchange providers of, you know, where is the law? Do we really have to do this? Show me exactly where it's written that that is my responsibility, that I have to include people with disabilities and have to provide accommodations. And I think over probably the last 3 years that I can remember, I'm seeing more of the shift to how, you know, there is a stronger commitment to include people with disabilities in all types of international exchange programs, and wanting to reach out to us more, providing more guidance on the how to recruit, how to include more people with disabilities through the whole cycle of an exchange program. Another thing quickly, Ashley talked, and the question was about diversity and intersectionality. I think earlier, we weren't really seeing disability included in diversity initiatives. We're seeing a greater push for diversity initiatives right now, and we do see disability included. Of course, these two comments are not like, no, that's done. We only see people contact us to figure out how, you know, or that disability is now always included in diversity. There's still work to be done, but we are seeing it more that programs, as mentioned in a previous session, that there is more on diversity and identity for students to be able to look up that information directly on their own from a program's website, and disabilities included there. We want programs to continue to link to our resources for that information as people build it, but we are also getting that questions of what type of resources can we include? We want to put an identity page on our website. What type of tips and information can we share up front for people to read about and learn?
Monica, I think that's terrific, and it's a testament to the clearinghouse, both in terms of sort of its ability to adapt to the changing landscape and environment, but also the kinds of things that you talked about, I think in some ways are a result of what the clearinghouse has done. So I think kudos to all of you. And we've got a bit of time left, so we got some questions waiting to be answered.
Yeah, we do. Monica, is it okay if I take this one?
Please, yeah.
Okay, we received a question. Thanks for your questions, by the way. One person commented, we also need to get more disabled people in careers in international exchange field. How do we make this happen? Well, I'm really glad you asked. So I think we as a team, and then also some of the other attendees here, I know we'll have a lot of ideas, just as far as some very low-hanging fruit. Something that can be done right away is actually as part of the Joining Hands symposium that we're all attending right now, there's a virtual poster fair hosted on the Joining Hands website. Joey Lenny, maybe you can include the link if you don't mind in the chat box. And the theme this year of the virtual poster fair is global careers. And so we're inviting, especially people with disabilities who are have registered to go to that page, kind of explore some of the virtual posters. These are going to have the theme of jobs, fellowships, and other opportunities that will lead you into international exchange or international development fields. And then if you're an attendee, a registrant who is from one of those fields, a professional from an organization working in some kind of global careers or citizen diplomacy, it's not too late to submit a poster proposal, and you'll find some information on that page about how to do so. But beyond that, I think there's a lot of things that we can do. One thing that we would really be strong proponents of is, as international exchange professionals, think about some of the professional spaces you occupy and see if you can invite students to come enter those spaces, share their experiences. We found so many of these conferences that are about student experiences have so few students sharing their perspectives directly firsthand. And so it makes a really strong impression, especially if you can invite some students with disabilities to come talk about what their experiences was like. What would they have done if they were international professionals? But it also gives them some exposure to this kind of world and to network with people who work in this field and who live and breathe international education. And they can hopefully that passion for it will be contagious enough to for them to learn about that this can be a career. I think a lot of people, disabled or otherwise, students don't even know that you can actually have a job where you're making money talking about study abroad or other kinds of international exchange travel all day. And then the State Department also has some interesting virtual internships that allow people to kind of get a chance to work maybe with embassies and other U.S. embassies in other countries, and other opportunities to promote citizen diplomacy, remotely. So that's another really fantastic opportunity too. If anybody else has some ideas, you're welcome to share them in the chat box, or my team might also have some. And we welcome other questions as well.
This is Justin. One of the things I would, should we wait?
Go ahead, Justin.
Captions, is it on?
Yep.
All right. Yeah, and I think I would start by saying too that, I feel like a couple years ago, it seemed like there was a nice handful of people with disabilities in the international education field that were working here that we could draw upon for to share their experiences, and we could draw upon them to kind of encourage other people, like, hey, look, here's somebody with an experience something like yours, at least like they had to ask for a reasonable accommodation or something like that, maybe see how they're being successful here. But I'm seeing a disconcerting number of people now. I've had a number of disconcerting conversations where, or observations in one conversation where it just seems like all the people that we knew are leaving the field. And so I know that, like, you know, I think like when you're, I think one of the challenges of the field that we have is when you feel like you're a frontline person, a lot of the kind of what you have to do in order to work your way up. I mean, I think there's nothing more poisonous if you feel like you can't really work your way up in a career, you know, that you can't grow. But kind of in order to grow, you have to start with the front line and using sort of applications that might be inaccessible, or doing kind of frontline activities that might be inaccessible to you in different ways. And I had a conversation with somebody else in the field about this, and I know I've certainly felt it myself. And so I think somehow there should be awareness of what people are kind of dealing with as we kind of try to climb the stairs in this career. And hopefully, you know, I know there was actually a session at NAFSA I saw a while back on not people with disabilities, but African Americans. And it was funny, it wasn't just like something like, it was titled like pulling ourselves up, or something like lifting ourselves up the stairs. And I thought that was interesting that they had created a forum for people, you know, to talk about their career experiences and maybe try to mentor each other, or at least try to draw attention to kind of what we're working through. But it would be kind of interesting to see sessions like that facilitated at NAFSA for disability. And I'd add also that we have, last year we did a initiative where we focused on career, international ed careers and disability. And we did a webinar last, I think it was December, where we had a few people from State Department present. We've done a handful of other things last year, so I definitely encourage you to take a look at some of that stuff. So thanks.
And I think I might add that even the externships that you're offering are to give people who are exchange alumni, people with disabilities, to get a taste of what is it like to design a program, design a project, develop a webinar, develop a video that's done professionally by the audience, by the community, as a way of tasting what this is like.
Yeah, David, thank you for pointing that out. And I mean, the goal of the externship, for those of you who don't know, is we want to, of course, it's about students organizing, or people organizing their own outreach project. And then we hope that that will also introduce them to the idea of working in international education. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that. And also, I know we have a number of tip sheets, but generally, like, you know, having resources on your page where you're talking about how someone can request a reasonable accommodation is helpful. And also the other thing I would say too is there are organizations like the American Association of People with Disabilities that have internships. Like AAPD has this great summer internship that they've been doing for years, and how it works is you're not interning with AAPD, you're interning with a partner organization. And so definitely, like, if you have a branch in the DC area, I would definitely encourage you to get in contact to partner with AAPD to see if you can maybe get some interns through that program in future years. That's a great way to just, if you're looking for more direct disability outreach methods.
I think that's good. I think how are we doing for time?
I think we're right on time.
Okay, should we take, you want to take one last question if there is one?
We don't have any more questions, but
okay.
David, if you want to kind of close us, and I'd love to hear, you know, there was the question of what I've seen here with the clearinghouse, but maybe you can help us wrap up with, on your side within ECA, the kind of changes you've seen on disability inclusion from your side.
No, thank you for that. And I think, and as I mentioned earlier, we in ECA are probably one of the prime users of clearinghouse resources and materials and advice. And you know, I've seen sort of just I think a landmark shift, kind of like what you talked about, Monica, in terms of the number of people with disabilities who are going on State Department exchange programs, and resources and materials that different offices have put together on their own to serve their constituents' particular needs. You know, it used to be a fairly infrequent situation where I would hear about a grantee with a disability who's going on a State Department exchange program. Now it is, it's a very natural thing, happens all the time. lots of programs have developed, as I said, their own resources and materials, and staff have expertise and experience on how to do this and share with each other. We formed internal working groups in the State Department that deal with disability and exchange for us to help ourselves. So I think it really has been a shift in terms of attitude, in terms of commitment, in terms of resources. And I think, you know, it's part of the overall focus or increased focus on diversity and inclusion, but I think disability is a key part of that. And, you know, I think we owe, you know, a thanks to the Clearinghouse has really helped make a lot of that happen.
Thanks, David. Thanks, David, for facilitating this session and having this discussion with the Clearinghouse team. I think we all really enjoyed this format and conversation. And as we close day one of Joining Hands, I just wanted to give you a preview for tomorrow's sessions. We got our Anatomy of MIUSA's Orientation and Exchange Program Planning, and that's going to be presenters with our MIUSA staff and managers. That's going to be really important to attend, just to kind of hear about those experiences and planning. And then we also have Disability Organization Panel. Many disability organizations sharing their resources and tips on how to effectively reach people with disabilities for international exchange programs. That's kind of one of the questions that we get. David, you asked that, but a lot of people want to know, like, how do I reach more people with disabilities? We're ready to include and recruit, but how do I do that? So it's going to be good to hear directly from disability organizations about outreach and kind of how to make sure that your programs are inclusive from the beginning in order to keep people with disabilities interested in your programs. And then finally, at 3 to 4 Eastern time, we won't have popcorn for you, but maybe you can grab a little bag of popcorn in your house and join us for Disability at the Movies, a screening of Planes, Trains, and Canes, and an interview with Mona Minkara. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, David, again for closing this day with us with an introduction to the Clearinghouse and conversation. And thanks to the Clearinghouse team for a successful day one.
Thanks, everybody, and congratulations so far. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining.